The money you use every day was not designed in public. It was redesigned in secret by powerful men you never voted for on a private island you were never meant to hear about. There were no cameras, no records, no debates, just a locked room, a private train, and a plan that still controls your life today. This is not ancient history. This is not kings or empires. This happened in modern America, and it worked. This is a history rewind, not the kind taught in school. This is the story hidden between the pages, shaping your paycheck, your savings, your debt, and your future. To understand it, we have to go back to a moment when America was already cracking, because every system-changing event begins with a crisis. October 1907. America panics, banks collapse, depositors flood the streets demanding money that no longer exists. There is no safety net, no central authority, no backstop, just fear. And when fear spreads, power shifts fast. The United States had no central bank, not because it forgot, but because it destroyed the last one decades earlier. Andrew Jackson killed it, calling it a monster that threatened democracy. America survived 77 years without one, but now the system was bleeding. Then one man stepped in, not a president, not Congress, a banker, J.P. Morgan from inside his private library. He locked the most powerful financiers in the country together, forced them to pool money, decided which banks lived and which died. And it worked. The panic stopped, but something else happened. Morgan proved private bankers could control the entire financial system without elections, without oversight, without permission. And once that power is proven, it is never given back publicly. The panic was treated as a warning privately. It was an opportunity. Congress created a National Monetary Commission to study reform. The man in charge was Senator Nelson Aldrich, one of the most powerful politicians in America, deeply connected to Wall Street, tied by family to the Rockefellers. This was not a neutral commission. It was a stage, and behind it, the real planning began. November 22, 1910, Hoboken, New Jersey. A private train waits. 7 men arrive separately. No assistance, no attention. They are told to use only first names and never speak of this trip. Because if the public knew the plan would die instantly, the train moves south, unseen the destination, a remote private island off the coast of Georgia, Jekyll Island, exclusive, isolated, controlled, owned by the richest families on Earth. This was not a vacation. It was a strategy session. The men stepping off that train represented nearly 1/4 of the world's wealth, and for 10 days they worked toward one goal: creating a financial system that would never threaten them again. Americans hated banks, hated Wall Street, hated centralized power. So the challenge was not how to build a central bank, but how to build one without anyone realizing it existed. And as the doors closed on that island, the drafting began a plan that would quietly take control of money itself and change history forever. 7 men, 10 days, no witnesses, and one document that quietly rewired the global economy. To understand how powerful that moment was, you need to know who was inside that room and why nothing there was accidental. First was Nelson Aldrich, a United States senator with massive control over financial law, but more importantly, family. His daughter married into the Rockefeller dynasty, which meant Wall Street already had a seat inside Congress. Aldrich's role was simple. Whatever was created on that island, he would move it through government and make it look like reform, not takeover. Then came Frank Vanderlip, head of National City Bank, backed by Rockefeller money years later. He admitted the meeting had to stay secret because if Americans knew bankers were writing banking laws, the plan would fail instantly. That sentence alone explains everything. Then there was Paul Warburg, European trained, deeply familiar with central banks across Germany, England, and France. Warburg did not bring just money. He brought the blueprint. He understood how to disguise control as stability, how to make a system look public while serving private interests. If the system was a machine, Warburg designed the engine. Representing J.P. Morgan was Benjamin Strong, quiet, strategic, and dangerous. He would later become head of the New York Federal Reserve, the most powerful position in the entire system. meaning he did not just design the system, he ran it. Others filled the room. Senior partners, bank presidents, even a treasury official, not to protect the public, but to legitimize the process. Every angle was covered: politics, money, and appearances, nothing left to chance. But the biggest problem was not economics, it was the American people. Americans hated banks. They remembered corruption. So the question was not how to create a central bank, but how to hide it. The solution was language. They would never call it a central bank. Instead, they chose a harmless name, the Federal Reserve System. Federal implied government reserve, implied safety. Then came structure. Instead of one bank, they created many regional banks across the country, making it look decentralized, democratic balanced. But behind the scenes, one bank would dominate everything. The New York branch controlled by Wall Street. Then came the master stroke ownership. The Federal Reserve would not be owned by the government. It would be owned by private member banks. Those banks would elect most of the directors. The government would get a few seats, just enough to claim oversight, but real power stayed with bankers. Then they changed money itself. Before this, money had limits. Gold, silver backing. After this, money could be created from nothing. The government needed money, so it issued bonds. The Federal Reserve bought those bonds with newly created money. The government spent it into the economy. But the bonds carried interest paid by taxpayers to a system owned by private banks. Money from nothing, loaned to government, repaid by the public forever. If Americans had been told this directly, it would never pass. So the story sold was stability, protection, prevention of panic, fear, lowered defenses, and the bankers knew it when the men left the island. They left separately, no records, no celebration, just a finished plan hidden inside technical language. It took 3 years to pass the first version. Failed, so they changed the name. Changed, the sponsors kept the same machine. December 23, 1913. 2 days before Christmas, Congress was mostly empty. The bill was massive. Few read it. Fewer understood it. And it passed quietly. No riots, no debate. By the time Americans realized what happened, the system was already locked in, and just months later, it faced its first true test war. The system was finally in place, hidden, legal, untouchable. And then came the moment it was built for war. World War I demanded unimaginable money under the old system. It would have required crushing taxes under the new system. Money was simply created. The Federal Reserve bought war bonds. Debt exploded. And the banks profited. J.P. Morgan's bank became the main purchasing agent for Britain and France, handling weapons supplies and loans. War became business, and business thrived. When the war ended, the money did not disappear. Easy. Credit flooded. The economy interest rates stayed low. Borrowing exploded. The stock market soared, but underneath it was all debt and speculation. Benjamin Strong, the same man from the island, controlled the flow. He ignored warnings. Because bubbles make banks rich. Then 1929, the crash, the system collapsed. Banks failed. Businesses died. Unemployment reached historic levels. The Federal Reserve was created to prevent this. And yet, it did nothing. It allowed the money supply to shrink. Small banks died. Families lost everything. Big banks bought the remains cheap. This was not failure. It was design crisis. Became a filter that removed the weak and strengthened the powerful. World War II followed the same pattern. Massive debt money creation. Bank profits. Public inflation. Then 1971, the final lock. The dollar was cut from gold money, became pure faith and unlimited printing. Followed then 2008, reckless banks collapsed again. The Federal Reserve created trillions, not for people but for banks. No executives punished millions, lost homes. The pattern repeated in 2020, even faster trillions, created market soared. Billionaires richer. Workers poorer. Inflation followed savings, destroyed interest rates, raised hurting workers. Helping banks since 1913, the dollar lost 98% of its value. This is not accidental. Inflation is policy. Your money is designed to shrink while new money reaches banks. first shifting wealth upward, the Federal Reserve, is not owned by government. It is owned by banks, J.P. Morgan, Citibank, the same bloodlines from the island, and in more than a century. It has never been fully audited. Attempts blocked because transparency would expose everything. The 7 men succeeded. They privatized money, hid it behind complexity, disguised it as stability, and locked it in forever. You cannot opt out. You earn their money, save their money, and lose value by design. This is not ancient history. This is your life, shaped by a meeting, a train, an island, and a decision made in secret, and the creature born there is still alive, still feeding. And now you finally know the truth.